Good evening, my friends. Today I'm going to share from Genesis chapter 22. And I'm reading through Genesis, and I'll tell you what, when I came across this the other day, I was a little disheartened. Um, and I'm just going to share. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt, which is test, because God does not tempt anyone. God did test Abraham and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and get into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell you of. And as I was thinking about this, it just really was. I just felt so strongly like, man, I couldn't possibly even imagine doing what Abraham did, just for God to tell him to take his son and offer him as a burnt offering, and for Abraham to respond and obey him. I mean, as you read on, even to the point where he has the knife in his hand and he's ready to bring the knife down. And as I was thinking about that and thinking about how I just didn't even think that I could possibly do it. I couldn't even imagine doing it or whatever. As I thought about that, the Lord was just kind of showing me like it doesn't, it's not my place to think about how I could handle Abraham's test. You know what I mean? Um, Abraham, if Abraham was reading this story before it had happened about somebody else, you know what I mean? Then maybe even Abraham wouldn't have been able to comprehend being able to do it. But, in that moment, in that time that God brought that to his attention and tested him by that, he also gave him the grace to do it. And also Abraham saw God. In my mind, I thought, I would always question double-mindedness. Like, well, did I hear God? Was that God? But I think Abraham literally saw God. Well, he didn't see God because no man has seen God and lived, but he saw, um, you know, something from the Lord, a dream or a vision or an angel, and the Lord showed him and told him what to do. And I don't know, and I was just thinking about that, but we see later on in Hebrews where it says that he offered up Isaac, thinking that God was even able to raise him from the dead. So even when he was considering that he might have had to follow through and sacrifice Isaac, he was believing that God would even raise him from the dead. And I never realized how great of faith that Abraham had. But he had great faith because even as he's walking up with Isaac, Isaac says to him, Where's the sacrifice? Here's the wood and whatever else we need for the sacrifice, but there's no lamb. And Abraham says, God will provide himself a sacrifice. So it's just beautiful to see. And for me it was encouraging to not think about being tested in the same way. Like when we look at Abraham and we look at Job, I think it's important to not be afraid that God's not going to lay something on us that is more than we can bear. It says that he's not going to give you any more than you can bear. So don't worry. Don't be afraid. It'll be exactly what you can handle. And don't be afraid to be tested in the way that Abraham and Job were tested. Because even if God did test you in that way, he would give you the grace to follow through with it. And more than anything, this test with Abraham was a foreshadowing. It was really an allegorical thing for us to see that the son that Abraham received, basically by the Spirit, by a miraculous conception, in the same way as Jesus, was offered up and was to be offered up as a sacrifice. His one and firstborn son, received according to promise, was to be offered up. And that was allegorical for us to see that God was going to send his only son and not withhold the sacrifice, but actually follow through and make him an offering for us. And thank God he did that. Amen.